it would be interesting to write a story about birth tourism or natal tourism, because it's definitely something that I've heard about and seems to be on the increase, but I haven't really read much about it. I haven't read many other articles, so I thought it was time somebody wrote something about this in English. It's interesting that that it was once something that only really, very wealthy people did, and now, although it's still not an option for most ordinary Russians, it's definitely becoming more common among the middle class. Firstly, it shows just how important the visa issue is for Russians, because for most of them, it wasn't that they immediately wanted to get a US passport for their child so that they could then live there or send them off to school there. It was really just a very practical question of not having to get a visa every time they want to go to a European country, for example. So it just shows really how much of a hassle that is for ordinary Russians. But then when I started researching the article, I was surprised by how big a factor the level of medical service also was for the Russian women I talked to. One of them had given birth 10 years ago and thought that perhaps now conditions would be better. The other one had also had a child almost 10 years ago and was convinced that nothing had changed. And so it was also a really big factor for them that they just didn't want to give birth in a Russian hospital. It was also interesting for me to find out about the contrast in approaches in the medical system. So one of the women I spoke to said that while she'd been in Russia, she was in hospital nearly all of the time, that she was pregnant, and they kept telling her that there were complications and something was wrong, and because she was 26 she was already classified as an aging mother, and she said that changed as soon as she went to the US, and that was interesting to hear about, because I have noticed from my own experience that definitely people tend to be in hospital in Russia in times when I think they wouldn't necessarily be in the UK, for example. But I think really for me, the most interesting thing I got from writing this article was the really helpful, amazing story that Alia Badanina told me about her experience of giving birth in Russia when she had her first child. For me, she really provided the most interesting part of this story, and just the shocking things that the nurses had said to her and the way she'd been treated. After I'd read her story and spoken to her, I completely understood why she would want to go abroad to have her second child.